Hey everyone, I thought I'd mix things up today and try my first tutorial, but I want to try to show you some things in the basic panel in Lightroom that really helped me when I started photography. So let's get to it. Alright, I can already tell that this is going to take multiple videos, so let's jump right in. Alright, so now you should have already opened Lightroom and you're on the second tab, Develop, and the first thing we got to understand is what does a histogram do? And so basically what a histogram is, it's a graph. So as you draw a line, you have an x-axis and then you have a y-axis. And what that represents is that the x-axis is all the pixels from black to white or from very dark to very light, 0% to 100%. For the y-axis, you have how many of those pixels are in the picture. And so say you have a lot of black pixels, those 0%, then the graph will go up and it'll show that you have a lot of black pixels. Say you have a lot of white pixels, the graph will go up here and it'll show that you have a lot of white pixels. Say you have a lot of 50% mid-tone type pixels, then right here in the 50% range, it'll show that you have a lot of mid-tone pixels. And so as you can see on my screen, what I have here is kind of this blocky gradient thing going on. And as you look at the histogram, you can see that the pixels that are represented there are one for each rectangle. And over here you've got 0% very dark over here. And then from here you've got 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100%. And again, what a histogram does is it tells you how many tones from dark to light are in your picture. Let me show you what this looks like when it's all smoothed out as a gradient. You can see that over here we've got a lot of dark and black pixels, and over time we've got different types of midtones, and then toward the end we have a lot of white pixels. And what that does is it represents right here that there's a lot of black and dark, and then it goes to there's some midtones and then a lot more white and lighter ones over here. So hopefully that helps you give a brief overview of what a histogram does. Let's jump into the treatment and profile section. The treatment section is basically just your starting point. Do you want to edit this picture in color or black and white? So let's just pick an image that I've taken around my house. We can pick one right here of my dog Sadie. We can edit it in color or we can start editing it in black and white. And then there we can start making adjustments the way we want to start editing the picture. For the sake of this tutorial, let's just use color. Okay, next up we're going to talk about the profiles. Now with Adobe, they have some profiles already pre-made for you, and they also have over here in this grid profiles that you can upload. Let's close this for a second and just go through the quick Adobe profiles that they have for you. So first off, they've got Adobe Color. And Adobe Color is just a default for color photos. It's where you start. They have a little bit more contrast and saturation than where you start out with your RAW or just maybe the standards of the portrait, but it's just a good place to start and gives you an idea of what your photo may look like in real life. Next up, you've got Adobe Landscape, and what Adobe Landscape does is it makes it a little bit more punchy, gives you wider dynamic range with where you're probably going to be shooting outside, and so what happens is a lot of those blues and greens pop a little bit more. It also preserves the skin tones just a little bit more than what they do with the blues and the greens. As you can see, going from color to going to landscape, you can tell a part of this parking garage here, it's not affected too much, but it is overall saturated and a little more punchy. Next up, you have Adobe Portrait, and yeah, Adobe Portrait is a great place to start if you're shooting portraits. What it does is it kind of makes everything a little bit more muted. So whether you're working with family portraits or individual portraits, the idea is that this profile will give you a wide range of skin tones to work with, from very pale to very dark. Okay, so next up you've got standard, and if you look at the histogram, basically going from portrait to standard, nothing changes a whole lot. Basically the standard is just a great neutral place to start if you want an image that is less contrasty or something where you just want to manipulate it a little bit more. You can start here and see where you go. It's also really good for photos that maybe you have weird colors in your photo or something just doesn't seem right. You can put it in standard and start with this very flat profile and be able to get a lot out of it as you start to edit it. And the next step with the color part, you have Adobe Vivid. And what Adobe Vivid does is just punches all the colors. Everything's a little bit more saturated, everything's a little bit more contrasty, and you can see in the histogram as you go from standard to Vivid, a lot of things are pushing more outside, and so everything is a little bit more contrasty and punchy. And then of course last you have Adobe Monochrome, which is the same as if we press our treatment black and white, and it's just a great place to start if you want to do a black and white edit. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to color. Now over here we have this grid, and when we click on the grid it opens up our profile browser, and what this does is it shows a bunch of different options for adding different profiles, and you can download free profiles, you can buy profiles online, and this is where you install them. Now, if you do buy profiles online, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw up on screen right now the path of where you put them in the folder. So what you can do is go to your library folder, click library, this will pop up. Then you need to go to application support, then you need to go to Adobe, then you need to go to camera raw, and then you need to go to settings. And in your settings is a whole list of things where you can put profiles and presets, and that's where they go. And then when you're done installing them, make sure Lightroom is closed and then reopen it, and they should appear in the profile section if they're profiles, or presets if it's a preset. Okay, hopefully that helped. Okay, so now we're gonna go back to the profile browser, and we're just gonna click on Adobe Raw, and that shows you all the different profiles that we just went through that were on Adobe's quick drop-down menu. But if you go to camera matching, what Adobe does is it has your camera profile setting, and it'll give you different profiles to start with based on your camera. And you can go through and click on the different profiles and see what it does to your picture. Make sure you check out the histogram to also see what's happening. Okay, lastly with this profile browser, you've got all these different artistic, black and white, modern, vintage, and then anything you download or add to it. So if we click on artistic, this will be our example. You can see that as we start hovering over, different things are happening to our picture that are more artistic or changing the colors a little bit, but we might not be able to tell always what's happening. And so like if we click on artistic 5, it looks pretty similar to how it started, but maybe a lot's changed. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back over to that gradient, and I'm just gonna click on different profiles to see what's going on. So if we click on artistic 1, you can see that it's adding a lot of purple. And if you click on artistic 2, it's kind of this muted red magenta profile. If you click on artistic 4, you can see that there's blues in it. And if you click on artistic 5, you can see there's kind of like this brownish gold and maybe a hint of red right here in the profile. And artistic 6 is interesting because you've got whites to pinks to blues to blacks. And so you can kind of see what's going on a little bit better with this gradient. And maybe that'll help you with your picture edit, or maybe it'll help you design your own profile. Okay, so let's go back to that picture of the parking garage, and let's go ahead and just click and make sure we're on artistic 1. And what I want to show you is you have this slider up here, and you can slide if you want more or less of it depending on what your taste is. So if we go to 0, that means none of it is in there. But as we bring up the slider, we're going to bring up the intensity. And so that might look good. You might want this kind of magenta-y, purple vibe going on with your picture. But as you click on different ones, you can pull more or less of it depending on what your taste is. And that might be a good way to start editing your image with a profile that looks like that. So as you've seen, there's also a few benefits with adding profiles over presets. You get to determine how much the intensity is there with the slider. A profile can be added at the beginning, just like we did here, or it can be even added at the end of your edit, and that might be your taste for what you're looking for. And what also I think is cool is though you may have a lot of presets or a lot of profiles, in the profile section you can favorite the ones you like. So if you go through and you click on the star, and you scroll back up and it's in your favorite section, but you could also close out and it'll be in your drop down menu right there whenever you need it. Alright, well that's all I want to share for this first part. We still gotta go over white balance, tone, and the presence section on the basic panel, but that can be for later videos. Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, press the like button. If you want to watch more of them, press the subscribe and the bell so you get notified when they come. I hope everyone has a great week, and we'll see you next week. Hey, so this is kind of like an intro for the outro, and I wanted to say at the beginning when I was first learning about the basic panel and how to use Lightroom and everything, I watched a bunch of different tutorials, and the reason why I think this would be helpful is because I wanted to make something where people could just go and learn how to make a good foundation of their image. And doing that in the basic panel I think is really helpful. If you do any editing at all, just use the basic panel to even out your images. Using profiles, using the exposure, the blacks, the whites, the highlights, the shadows, presence. It makes a world of difference just to have a good foundation of what your image looks like.